Have you ever noticed how easy it is to spend money without even realizing it? It feels like we're surrounded from all sides, doesn't it? You leave home and right there on the first billboard, there's an irresistible offer. You go to the grocery store and all the time there are unmissable promotions. And if you stay at home, even then you're not safe. Sitting comfortably on the couch, as soon as you turn on the TV, those eye-catching commercials appear, and when you pick up your phone, social media is flooded with ads that seem tailor-made for you. It's as if companies know exactly what we're thinking and desiring. But do we really need all of this? How many times have you bought something on impulse and later asked yourself, why did I do that? If you stop to think about it, it happens more often than we'd like to admit. It's so easy to get caught up in the idea that everyone around you is buying something new. A friend just got a new phone and seems so happy, right? Then comes that thought, if everyone has it, I need it too. And that's when we fall into the trap of spending money that often we don't even have. Now, I know it may seem simple to avoid these expenses, but the truth is that companies are experts at convincing us. They play on our emotions, making promises of happiness and success if we buy their product. And let's face it, who hasn't thought that a new item could solve a problem or somehow improve our lives? And you know what happens? We buy it. And at first, it may even feel great. But then, when the credit card bill arrives or when we realize we're tight at the end of the month, reality hits. We spend more than we should have. And this story repeats month after month. That's why it's so important to understand the impact of our purchasing decisions and to learn how to deal with this flood of temptations in a more mindful way. Today we're going to talk about some simple yet powerful techniques that can help curb this behavior and give you more control over your money. So, let's take this journey together to understand how marketing and advertising impact your wallet and how you can defend yourself to spend more wisely. Are you ready? Let's get started. Have you ever stopped to think about how advertisements affect the way you spend money? Advertising is everywhere, from social media to TV commercials, and its goal is simple: to make you want to buy something. But it goes far beyond just showing a product. Companies invest heavily in studying people's behavior to know exactly what attracts us. They know how to trigger desires, how to play with our emotions, and they do it in a way that feels personal. Think about it. You open your phone and start scrolling through your Instagram feed. There it is, an ad for new sneakers, exactly the style you like, with a message that says, exclusive discount, today only. What does that do to us? It creates a sense of urgency, like it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we can't miss. And just like that, the urge to buy kicks in. This happens to everyone. When we come across such well-crafted ads, it's hard not to fall into the temptation of thinking we need that item, whether it's new clothes, a phone, or anything else. The problem is that, most of the time, we don't really need it, but the ads make it seem like we do. And there's more. Companies also take advantage of moments of weakness. When we're tired, sad, or anxious, it's much easier to be swayed by emotions. And let's be honest, how many times have we made a purchase just to try to lift our mood, only to realize later it wasn't that necessary? But what's the result of all this? We spend without thinking, pile up debt, and then feel the pinch at the end of the month. So, the first step to avoiding this kind of situation is simple. Recognize that advertising is always trying to influence us. Knowing this helps us take a pause before making a decision. Next time you feel that sudden urge to buy something, ask yourself this question: do I really need this, or am I being influenced by the advertisement? Taking this small step may seem simple, but it's a powerful way to start spending less and more consciously. Now that we understand the impact of advertisements in our daily lives, let's move forward and talk about a problem that many people around the world face: the accumulation of debt. This is a universal issue because debt affects people everywhere in different situations. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It usually starts small, but if we're not careful, it can grow and become a heavy burden. Knowing how this happens and how to avoid it is essential for maintaining financial peace of mind. Have you ever heard that excessive use of credit can be like falling into a trap? It seems like a help at first, but it can turn into a nightmare if not well managed. And it doesn't just happen to you or your friends. Millions of people around the world face problems with credit card debt and other forms of credit. Let's imagine a common situation. You go to the mall, see something you really want: a new phone, some clothes, or perhaps an appliance that seems necessary at that moment. The credit card is right there, ready to be used. I'll just split it into installments. It'll be easy to pay off month by month, you think. The purchase is made, and in the first month, everything seems fine. But then comes the next month, and besides your regular expenses, you have to deal with that installment. And then, other unexpected expenses arise. Maybe the car needs repairs or medical bills come up. What do? You use the card again. The problem starts when this snowball keeps growing. Next month, the bill is higher and you decide to pay only the minimum amount. It seems like a temporary solution, but that's where the real trap begins. Interest starts accumulating, and the total amount you owe increases month after month, even if you keep paying. This is the infamous debt cycle. The credit card may seem like a helpful tool, but it's only truly useful if used wisely. Many people around the world face problems because they believe they're in control, when, in fact, they're just postponing a bigger debt. One of the most effective ways to avoid this is quite simple. If you can't pay for something up front, it might be better not to buy it. It sounds like a strict rule, but it's a safeguard against debt accumulation. Another important point is to avoid paying only the minimum amount on your bill. This prolongs the debt and increases the total amount to be paid, thanks to interest. The tip here is, if possible, pay the full bill amount every month. If you're already in a difficult situation, prioritize paying off high-interest debts like credit cards before considering other expenses. If a credit card is too big of a challenge to control, try using a debit card or, even better, physical cash. This brings us to the next topic: how physical cash helps us manage our spending better compared to digital payments. We live in an era where nearly all our purchases can be made with a click. Suddenly, the money that we used to count, withdraw, and physically carry is now just numbers on a smartphone screen. Card payments, instant transfers, bank transfers, and online shopping have become so easy and fast that sometimes we don't even realize the money is leaving our account. What happens when we don't physically see the money going away? Most of us lose that immediate sense of "I'm spending." Think about it. When you used cash, you knew exactly how much you had in your wallet, and each purchase visibly decreased the amount. If you left the house with 3 bills and returned with only one, the impact was immediate. But today, with a card or smartphone, all we see is a decrease in the bank balance, which we often only check at the end of the month when it's too late. This convenience is great in many ways but can also be dangerous if we don't know how to control it. It's much easier to lose track of how much we've already spent when we're not dealing directly with physical money. That's why many people end up spending more than they realize, accumulating small purchases that, by the end of the month, turn into a bigger bill than expected. But what can we do to regain control? The answer lies in being more conscious and attentive to our habits. A simple tip is to track your expenses regularly, not just at the end of the month. Today, many banking and finance apps allow you to see your balance in real time. Make it a habit. Every time you make a purchase, check how it impacts your balance. This helps regain that feeling of seeing the money leaving. Another powerful strategy is to limit the use of credit cards for larger purchases and prioritize using a debit card or physical cash for daily expenses. When you pay in cash, the pain of seeing the bills leave your wallet returns, and this can curb many impulses. If physical cash is not practical for you, try setting monthly spending limits in your digital account to give you more clarity on how much you can spend. Managing digital spending may seem like a challenge at first, but with these simple practices, you'll start to notice that it's possible to regain control over your money and, consequently, your finances. We've already seen how the convenience of digital payments can make us lose control over our spending, but now it's time to talk about a simple yet powerful technique that can transform how you view your purchases. Often, the key to spending less isn't found in complicated financial formulas but in a simple shift of perspective. Let's discuss how valuing your time can be the path to making smarter financial decisions. Imagine this: you're at the mall eyeing that pair of shoes you really loved. They're in the shop window, shining, and the price is $700, or whatever currency you use. At that moment, you think maybe you can pay in installments or find a way, and the impulse to buy starts taking over. But instead of thinking about the money value, what if you stop to think about the value of your time? This technique is quite simple. Convert the purchase amount into the hours you would need to work to pay for it. If you earn $3,000 a month, for example, and work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for a total of 22 working days per month, you would have worked 176 hours in the entire month. Now, if you divide your salary by the hours you worked, you'll see that each hour of your work is worth about $17. So, going back to the example of the shoes that cost $700, just divide that amount by how much you earn per hour. In this case, the shoes would cost you 41 hours of your work. That means you would have to work almost an entire week just to pay for that single pair of shoes. Now, let's stop and think. Would you be willing to work an entire week just to pay for one item? This completely changes the perspective, doesn't it? Many times, we don't realize the true effort required to buy certain things until we convert their value into working hours. And this can be a big help in curbing impulse purchases. This technique is universal. It doesn't matter where you are in the world or how much you earn. The principle is always the same. By calculating how much your time is worth and how many hours you need to dedicate to pay for something, you'll think twice before making a purchase decision. This kind of reflection helps us to be more selective, to prioritize what is really necessary and what makes sense for our budget. Of course, sometimes you will realize that the purchase value is fair and fits within your plan, but other times, this simple calculation might be what helps you avoid an unnecessary expense. Now that you've learned to convert the value of a purchase into working hours, it becomes easier to understand the real weight of each financial decision, doesn't it? This simple technique can be a great ally to avoid the famous impulse spending. But speaking of impulse, many of our purchases are made precisely in those moments when we act without thinking much about the consequences. That's why we're going to dive into a technique that will help you curb this behavior. Let's talk about the 30-day rule, a powerful tool to beat the temptation of impulse purchases. Who hasn't come across something in a store or online and felt that immediate urge to buy it? It could be an electronic gadget, a piece of clothing, or even a decorative item. At the moment, it feels like the best thing in the world. Your heart races and you already imagine yourself with the product in hand. But you know what this really is? An impulse. And often when we buy on impulse, we end up regretting it later. So, how can you overcome the temptation to buy something on the spot without thinking? The answer is the 30-day rule. This technique is quite simple and effective. It works like this. Every time you feel that urge to buy something non-essential, don't buy it right away. That's right, hold back the impulse. Put a mental break and wait for 30 days. During this period, you'll find out if you really need or want that item. And if at the end of the 30 days the desire to buy is still there, it's probably a valid and planned purchase, not just an emotional reaction at the moment. This rule works because it creates a time barrier between desire and action. When we give ourselves this space, we often realize that the initial urge fades away, and what seemed like an urgent need wasn't actually that important. What's interesting is that, in most cases after the 30 days, you might even forget you wanted that item. Imagine, for example, you saw a new pair of headphones that seemed perfect for your work or leisure. Instead of buying them immediately, apply the 30-day rule. Wait. You may find after that time that the headphones you already have are working just fine and that there wasn't such an urgency to replace them. Or it could be that, at the end of the period, you still feel like you need those headphones, but now with the certainty that it wasn't an impulse but a conscious decision. Besides avoiding unnecessary debts, this technique also teaches patience and reflection before acting. The more you apply it, the more you'll realize that many things you thought you needed weren't so essential after all. An interesting bonus of this rule is that it helps reduce the accumulation of things we don't use. After all, how many times have we bought something on impulse that ended up sitting at home or in the closet unused? With the 30-day rule, you only invest in things that truly make a difference in your life. We've already learned that holding back the impulse and applying the 30-day rule is a great way to avoid regrets and make more conscious purchases. But we can't talk about spending less without also discussing the importance of saving with a purpose. Many people believe that saving is simply holding on to money, but the truth is, saving for the sake of saving without a clear goal can end up being pointless. For savings to really have an impact on your life, they need to be tied to goals. Let's understand this idea better now. Many people out there think that saving money is simply putting away whatever's left at the end of the month, but the truth is this approach rarely works. Do you know why? Because without a clear goal, it's much easier to spend money on anything that comes your way. The key here is not just saving but saving with a purpose. Imagine this, you want to save money but you don't have a specific goal. It's likely that at some point you'll feel like spending on something, and because you don't have a clear reason to keep saving, you end up using that money without thinking twice. And when you do this multiple times, your savings effort goes down the drain. Now think of another scenario. Let's suppose you have a clear goal. It could be paying off debt, buying a house, taking a dream vacation, or reaching an investment target. This goal, when well-defined, becomes your motivation. It will guide all your financial decisions. Every time you consider spending on something unnecessary, you'll remember your goal and assess whether that purchase will bring you closer to or further away from it. Having a purpose for saving makes financial discipline easier. You're not just holding on to the money, you're investing in a better future. The key here is to set a realistic goal and, even more importantly, break that goal into smaller steps. For example, if you want to save a substantial amount to buy a car or take a trip, divide the total amount into smaller monthly targets. This way you'll have a constant sense of progress and motivation. This idea also helps resist daily temptations. When you have a bigger goal, each small financial victory counts. And instead of feeling like you're depriving yourself of something, You feel like you're moving towards your dream. Moreover, saving without a goal can seem demotivating and even boring, as if it's just saving for the sake of saving. When you set a goal, it gives more meaning to the act of saving. There's also another point. Saving without a purpose can actually lead you to spend more without realizing it, because any small obstacle can make you lose focus. Of course, each person will have a different goal, and there's no single path for everyone. It could be something big like buying a house or something more immediate like a holiday trip. What matters is that, with a clear purpose, you'll be much more resistant to impulse buying or spending on things that don't make sense for your life. So, next time you think about saving, ask yourself, what is my goal? It could be a major change like getting out of debt or even a long-term dream. The important thing is always to have something in mind to motivate you to keep going. So far, we've talked about how important it is to save with a clear goal. Having a purpose turns the simple act of saving into something much more motivating. But we must not forget that, in addition to saving, we also need a strategy for what to do with that money. Simply letting the money sit idle is not the solution. The next step is to learn how to make your money work for you. And here comes a very important lesson about investments and the idea of paying yourself first. Let's understand how this works and why it's crucial for your financial future. Have you ever heard of the idea of paying yourself first? If not, get ready, because this is one of the most powerful strategies when it comes to achieving financial stability. The concept is simple, but the impact is huge. Instead of waiting until the end of the month to see what's left and try to save, the idea is to reverse this process. As soon as the money hits your account, you immediately set aside a portion to invest or save. And then what's left is what you'll use to live on for the month. What does this mean in practice? It means that your priority from day one is to invest in yourself and your future. When you pay yourself first, you are ensuring that part of your money is set aside to build something bigger. It could be an emergency fund, a long-term investment, or even a reserve to reach that goal we talked about in the previous section. Many people make the mistake of waiting until the end of the month to see if there's any money left to invest or save. The problem is that most of the time there isn't. Life happens, unexpected expenses arise, and before we know it, the salary has been entirely consumed by bills and daily expenses. But when you pay yourself first, that money has already been set aside up front, and you won't even miss it. Another advantage of this technique is that it forces you to live within your budget. When you set aside money right at the beginning, what's left is what you have to cover all your expenses for the month. This forces you to be more disciplined and mindful of your spending, because you know that you've already invested an important part of your money. And what should you do with this portion you're setting aside? This is the moment to start thinking about making your money work for you. Instead of letting the money sit idle in an account, you can invest it in something that will yield returns over time, whether in stocks, investment funds, or even your own business. The important thing here is to understand that the money you save needs to be put to work and grow. Now, imagine this. You pay yourself first every month and consistently invest that money. Over time, these investments start to generate returns, and those returns keep growing, creating a cycle where your money works for you, instead of you only working to earn money. This is what we call financial freedom. When the money you've invested generates enough income to cover your expenses. Paying yourself first is a shift in mindset. Instead of spending first and saving what's left, if there's anything left, you invest first and adjust your lifestyle with what remains. With this strategy, you start to build a solid foundation for your financial future. Now tell me, have you ever tried paying yourself first? Write a word in the comments that sums up what paying yourself first means to you. It could be something like freedom, future, or whatever comes to mind. Let's see how many of you are already taking this first important step toward achieving financial stability. Don't forget to leave a like to support our channel. Your support is crucial for us to keep going. Let's continue. We've already talked about the importance of paying yourself first and how it can be a game changer for your financial life. Now, let's address something that complements this strategy very well. Understanding what's truly worth saving on and what's worth spending on. After all, saving everything and living with the bare minimum may not be the best approach to enjoying life. The key is to find a balance between being financially responsible and still enjoying the good things you love. Let's talk about how to do this wisely. Many times, when we talk about saving, people think they need to cut all expenses and live extremely frugally, but that's not the idea. Life is meant to be lived, and part of that includes spending on things that genuinely bring you happiness and value. The secret is learning to differentiate between expenses that are worth it and those that are not. Think of it this way: there are areas of your life where saving makes perfect sense, and others where it's worth spending a bit more. For example, saving on impulse purchases, frequent dining out, or subscriptions you barely use can make a big difference in your budget without feeling much of a sacrifice. But at the same time, spending on something that genuinely brings comfort, pleasure, or personal growth could be a smart choice. Imagine that you love to travel and that it brings you immense joy. In this case, it might be worth planning and spending on a dream trip because it's an experience that will enrich your life. Now, what might not be worth it is spending on small daily things that don't bring you as much happiness, like an expensive coffee every morning, or clothes you bought impulsively and don't even wear. The main point here is to understand what really matters to you. Ask yourself, will this bring me long-term value? Will it improve my quality of life? If the answer is yes, it might be a good investment. But if it's something fleeting that only brings momentary satisfaction, it's better to reconsider. Another important point is that by knowing where to spend and where to save, you can adjust your budget intelligently. By cutting unnecessary expenses, you free up more money for what truly matters to you, like a course that can help your career, a hobby that brings you joy, or even that special dinner that makes the moment worthwhile. Remember, we're not talking here about living in an extremely strict and rigid way, but rather living with purpose and prioritizing what really makes a difference. True wealth lies in knowing how to enjoy life without compromising your financial stability. Throughout this journey, we've talked about simple but powerful techniques to better control your money and make smarter financial choices. We've learned that the secret to a healthy financial life isn't just in saving or avoiding impulse purchases, but in having a clear purpose for your money and, more importantly, knowing how to balance your priorities between what's worth saving on and what's truly worth investing in. But it's important to remember, it's not about living a life full of sacrifices. Balance is the key to a successful and happy financial life. Knowing where to cut and where to spend is what will allow you to live peacefully without giving up on the things that bring you happiness. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, but how do I find this balance between saving for the future and still enjoying the present? And that's an essential question because many people make the mistake of saving so much that they don't live in the now. Others, however, spend too much in the present and compromise the future. The secret here is finding a balance. Yes, it's important to save and invest in your future, but it's also crucial that you enjoy life. This means, for example, allocating part of your budget for leisure, hobbies, and special moments. After all, what's the point of having money saved if you're never going to use it to create memories and live experiences that truly matter? The trick is simple. Make a plan that includes both your long-term financial goals and your present pleasures. Set an amount you will save each month and an amount that will be dedicated to enjoying life now. This way, you won't feel like you're depriving yourself of everything, but at the same time, you'll be walking safely towards your dreams. And you know what's best? When you find this balance, saving becomes much more enjoyable because you know you're not giving up on living, but rather organizing yourself to ensure you have the resources to achieve even more in the future. And with that, we come to the end of this conversation. I hope the tips we discussed here have helped you rethink the way you handle money. The important thing is to remember that with small changes in your daily life, you can build a healthier financial life, enjoying each phase of your journey without compromising your future. If you like this content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more tips that will transform your relationship with money. See you next time.